A number of months ago, we were told there would be a no-napping day. The congregation's been here 100 years. How could we participate in such an event? Who could we say made the community a better place? Now, we could have honored our own rabbi, Barry, anybody. We like to do that. We honor each other all the time. But do we make the community a better place? Is the lake a nicer village to live in? Tikkun olam. It's a Hebrew word saying to make the world a better place, to heal the world, or actually tikkun, to repair the world. The rabbis tell us that the purpose of man, of all people, is to create a dwelling place for the Eibishter, God. Make godliness down here on earth, amongst ourselves. We are taught this in the Torah. Rabbi Miller says the foundation of saintliness is when any person understands the purpose of his being here in the world, to make it a better place. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. For any person to stand up and say, I want to make the world a better place. It's so much easier just to be part of a team, to go along with the river, to blow with the wind, and to stand there like Abraham did and say, I think there's one God. I don't care if everybody else thinks different. Or Columbus, I don't think the world's flat. Everybody thinks something different. They're going to think I'm weird, strange. But it takes a lot of courage for a person to say, I think I have something that's right. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, one of my favorite rabbis, he says, Kolom holokolo kashazava'o. The whole world is like a narrow bridge. But our main thing to do on the bridge is not to fear. Because if we stick with God, our body and our soul, like we sing in Adon Olam, if we really believe that God's with us, it's like a covered bridge, you see? You can't look over the side and see the rushing waters down below. You're on a safe bridge. And you can make the world a better place, crossing from this world to the next, and living a strong life on this world. The Torah teaches us, the Bible teaches us that any time that a person is strong enough to bring godliness in the world, that God will come and bless you. We're also told that it could take 10 generations, like Abraham or Noah, but God will give you the blessing if you have the courage to stand up and make the world a better place. Pierre Kavois, the sayings our fathers, also teaches us that when there is no man in a place and in a time, then you be that man. You be that person to make the place a better place. So when they came to us and they asked us, tell me, who could you honor in this community that made the lake a better place? It was a pretty unanimous decision, but somewhat controversial amongst ourselves, that perhaps it'd be a really good idea to pick a person who had the courage to stand here and say, not in this neighborhood. No, you're not. You're not going to spray KKK here. You're not going to put a Nazi symbol here. Because we here in the lake get along with one another. If you doubt that, my esteemed Rabbi Weinberg, come from Frankfurt, in and around Frankfurt, Germany, will tell you, it would have been really nice when he was a little boy to have a Walter Cuenin like this in front of his synagogue on Kristallnacht. So if you doubt what was done here a number of years before I arrived, you can talk to people who know the results of people who don't stand up. At one time, before I came here, there was that man. And today we are proud to honor that man for all the things that he did, for being a man when there was a time and a place when it called for someone to be a man. Now, as president, you know, I could talk forever because I'm trying to get reelected. But I'd rather tell you this. I'd rather turn this over to someone who's much more articulate, whose family helped found this synagogue in this neighborhood, and whose family's been here a long, long time, that she helped organize this and helped put together this program with all the things, and she probably could do a much better job in telling you what we're here for, and that person is the Honorable Barry Gilflex, our President Emeritus.
Thank you, Binyon. That's going to be a hard act to follow. I'd like to welcome you all to Congregation Agudas Achim Anshe Sfard, the Adams Street Synagogue. The name of our synagogue, Agudas Achim, means a brotherhood. And I think it's very appropriate that that is the name that we have, especially on a day like today. The question, of course, is why are we honoring Father Cuenin? By the way, he doesn't use the title that he is entitled to by reason of his education and religious ordination. He should be referred to by all of us as the Reverend Dr. Cuenin. But all of you who know him know that that's not his style, but I just couldn't resist. You probably all know that Father Cuenin had spent a number of years studying in Rome to earn the many degrees that he holds, but did you know that he did all those classes and exams and everything in Latin? Do you know that in addition to Latin, he speaks French, Italian, Spanish, and incidentally English? With all of those languages, it is obvious that he has many ways to communicate with us, and many ways in which he has communicated with us. How did he become a priest? He says of himself, "My parents were not enthusiastic about my entering the seminary. They thought I had illusions of grandeur." And at his ordination in 1970, one of the priests said to him, "Walter, we know you are going to be a leader of people. We just don't know where you are going to lead them." You all know that Father Cuenin heads the Interfaith Chaplaincy at Brandeis University, where he leads a group of 4 and soon to be 5 religious leaders. We know about his religious leadership and his leadership abilities, so perhaps you will not be surprised to learn that the student body at Brandeis refers to Walter as the chief rabbi. We knew that our local church, Our Ladies, had a new and different leader when Sister Fran called. Where's Sister Fran? There she is. There she is. Sister Fran called us and said she'd like to bring her religious education classes here to the synagogue to learn about Judaism, an outreach program that had been suggested to her by their new pastor, Father Cuenin. We were delighted to welcome those children whose interest in our synagogue, its architecture, its artifacts, and whose quest for information about the Jewish roots of their Christian belief can never seem to be satisfied. It's been over 20 years since these students have been coming to us, and we hope that they will continue to do so for a very long time. The immigrant Jewish families who built this synagogue in 1912, and parenthetically, this is our 100th anniversary, 100 years that we have been a part of the Nonantum community. When they built it, most of the neighbors were Irish and Italian and French Canadian. In the 1990s, we were still here, but our congregation was a very small one, especially compared to the size of Our Ladies. Until one fateful day in 1977, when our illusion of living in a perfect world was shattered by a kid with a can of spray paint. We were shocked. In our history, almost 100 years, no one had ever done that to our synagogue. We couldn't believe it. It was just unbelievable. What was the response to this assault on a synagogue? Well, we remember what Father Cuenin did. He walked over here one Sunday, and he just happened to bring about 300 members of his congregation with him. It's easy to join interfaith clergy groups and talk about respect for differences. It's easy to speak intellectually about the Jewish roots of Christianity. I was not here on that Sunday when Father Cuenin and his congregation took their walk down Adams Street. But in the last 15 years, I have heard about that walk and that day and that visit from dozens of members of this community about the impact that it had on their awareness, their consciousness, and on their lives. But it would be selfish and self-centered of us to act as if the only unique thing that Walter Cuenin ever did was that one day. Walter, as we have already mentioned, has acted on his belief in ways that have impacted him personally and influenced those around him. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know when I tell you that he did not leave this neighborhood voluntarily. We are delighted that he has fetched up on the hospitable shores of Brandeis University so that he is still within hailing distance of the parish that he loved and that loves him still. And it is our community, the Lake, from the church and from the synagogue that has gathered here today to honor Walter Cuenin for living the brotherhood that our communities strive for. Father Cuenin represents the finest qualities of honesty, dignity, integrity, brotherhood, and community service to all the citizens of Newton, and we are delighted to welcome him home. And now I would like to introduce our Rabbi Weinberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Just a quick word of introduction. I noticed there are very many white yarmulkes here in the synagogue. Now, I want to explain to you that yarmulkes, there are many colors. They're knit in many ways, and they don't really mean anything theologically. They can be any color, although around the high holidays, we use white yarmulkes as a symbol of purity, but otherwise, anyone can be used. So I suppose somebody decided to have white yarmulkes here. That's fine. However, if I would have been asked, I would have suggested red yarmulkes, which there are. You can get red yarmulkes, because that would have made a very nice suggestion of what we want Father Cuenin to be, but with all the pictures being taken. But the next time, I'll make sure that there are red yarmulkes here. You finally got it. Many years ago, King David asked a question in one of his beautiful Psalms, Psalm 24, Mi ya'aleh v'har Hashem, o mi yukum bimkom kadsho. Who shall ascend the mountain of God, and who shall stand in that place of holiness? And King David gives his own answer. And the answer he gives is Naki Kapayim, one who has clean hands, Uval Levov, and whose heart is pure. I believe that these words could have been written for Father Walter Cuenin, whose life is a personification of these ideals. The decisions which have motivated the actions of Father Cuenin have not always been easy, and their consequences have very often been very difficult. And as I was thinking about today, was looking for some examples. And what came to mind was that fateful moment in history when the voice of God came to Abraham and requested of him to sacrifice his only child, his only son. And even though it never actually was carried out, one can imagine the feelings that Abraham had at that moment to do such a thing with his beloved child. And yet, Abraham had one word as an answer. Hineni, here I am, God. I'm ready to do what has to be done. I know it's hard, I know it's difficult, but I'm ready. Hineni, here I am. And the other example I thought of was Moses at the burning bush. When the voice of God came to him and requested that he goes back to that terrible and oppressive land of Egypt for the purpose of leading his people to freedom. And Moses could have simply run away from it. And yet he said, I will go. And he led the children out of slavery into freedom. And that is how I see the life of Walter Cuenin. When the time came from the right decisions, even though those decisions were very, very difficult, there never was any equivocation. There never was any fear of consequences. There was only one response: Hineni. Here I am, and I'm ready to do that which is right. Jewish tradition does not consider itself the only avenue to salvation. In fact, there is a very warm place in our theology and in our hearts for the tzadikei umos ha'olam, for the righteous people of the world. And there is little question in my mind that Father Cuenin ranks among the highest of these people. My friends, I've received the permission of Father Cuenin to express to him and to bestow upon him our ancient blessing all the way back to the Bible. And Father Cuenin knew right away it was from the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, the fourth book in the 5 books of Moses. And it's a great honor for me to give him, to bestow upon him this blessing, but I know I speak for all of you too. So I'm going to ask you to please rise, and Father Cuenin will join me when I do this. Yissimcha Elohim k'Ephraim v'chimenashe, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Yoweh Adonai ponav elecha v'chuneka. May God lift up his countenance upon you and shine upon you. Yisro Adonai ponav elecha v'yoseim lecha shalom. May lift his countenance upon you and give you and yours many years of shalom, of peace. Amen. Amen.
On a slightly lighter note, I'd like to introduce you to the Brookline Newton Senior All-Stars, who are going to present some music for us. And we have tried in Jim D'Amico, the artistic director, has tried very hard to include some music that represents the feelings that we have about Father Cuenin and about our community.
I'm Jim D'Amico, and I asked him to call me a band leader, but Jerry called me an artistic director, so now I have to say some things to explain my artistic vision. When I was asked to do this, I had no idea who Father Cuenin was. I went to the internet and found a whole lot of things, depending on your point of view, very good or very bad. I thought they were very good. And I thought that celebratory songs would be the best way to approach this. Celebrations of life, celebrations of love, celebrations of good health, that sort of thing. Things that I thought everybody could get on board with, everybody would understand. And plus, one of them is from Fiddler on the Roof, and you can never go wrong with Fiddler on the Roof. So we're going to start with To Life from Fiddler on the Roof.
and art of fortune. Be happy, be healthy, long life. And if my good fortune never comes, good cake whatever comes, drink the higher. Shul.
That was certainly an easy choice. No one would be having any trouble with that, non-controversial. The next one, the song about love, is a little bit more difficult because there are people who would be offended by anything that you can sing about love. And there are people who would be accepted in the spirit of joy. It should be a celebratory thing when people are in love. And you should look at it in the simple way, the same way that Dean Martin looked at it back in 1953 when he sang this song for the first time. That's your start us up? From the Yiddish theater, and because those of us who know Yiddish don't do the singing, and those of us who do the singing don't know Yiddish, we're going to do it as an instrumental. I'll be the Zone is the name of the song. If you have your help, you've got it all. Back to 1968, when there were, as I'm sure most people remember, race riots, the war in Vietnam, anti-war riots, a lot of political instability and polarization politically, just pretty much like we have today, maybe even worse. Spear rioting and all. Anyway, back in those dark days, let me see if I got to get the name straight. George David Weiss and Robert Keeley wrote a song that they hoped would help bring people together. They gave it to Louis Armstrong to sing, and it didn't go well at the beginning. They sold about 1,000 copies in 1968, and nobody cared. I had never heard it before. I heard it in 1988 when it was used as background music for Good Morning Vietnam, which is a movie with Robin Williams that really took off, and that launched the song. And it really did help, I think, in some cases, to bring people together. It did become a standard in many cases. And it's called What a Wonderful World. And we're going to start that. We'll play it.
The color
flute, Vivian Tomei on drum, and Esther Gruber on piano, and myself, Jim D'Amico, and we thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much, Jim. I think each one of those songs had some special message for each of us. And as you were playing it, I could just hear Satchmo's voice singing that song. I'd now like to introduce Sister Marie Labolita, who is going to speak about Walter. Sister Marie is a sister of charity from Halifax, Nova Scotia. She has been a friend of Father Cuenin's for 40 years, and so we expect to hear lots of interesting stories. She served with him as a pastoral associate at Our Ladies for 10 years, and she is the president and co-founder of Sacred Threads, an interfaith ministry for women dedicated to providing opportunities for women to explore and enrich their spiritual journeys. Sister Marie?
Oh, the stories I could tell.
Please no.
Too late.
It could be payback time.
This is what happens when women start to speak in synagogues and churches.
And now you know it's going to happen even more.
Once the Vatican goes after the nuns, you're all done.
Are you sure it's not going to be the reverse? Now, here we go. This is what we've been doing for 40 years. Beryl, I think maybe you and I probably sat down and in our dreams were working on much of the same talk somehow or other. It's a privilege, Walter, for me to be here today to honor you, and it's a privilege to be able to share with you some and only some of the Walter stories. I'm reminded, first of all, that last song, Jim, was so beautiful, A Wonderful World. And Walter, that's really what you have created in all of the parishes that you have been in. We call it Cueninism, but Walter has really, over the years, in every parish that he's been in, he has created a community that has been vibrant, a place where all are welcome, a place where everyone is important, and there was never this hierarchy of values, either in staff or with parishioners. And Walter, of course, is not your average priest, as we all know. And that's good, because we need more not average priests. Dickens said it so well when he said it was the best of times and the worst of times. And there's no doubt that Walter has experienced over the years, in all of his 40 years of priesthood, the best of times and also the worst of times. As we honor Walter today with the Cornerstone Award for Community Building, we see that the best of times were his and the best of times are ours. For many of us, Walter has been the cornerstone and the foundation on which many communities have flourished, thanks to his great leadership skills as a pastor and thanks to his warm friendship that he's created with many vibrant communities. And vibrant because he has set the tone for many of those opportunities that were given to all of us. The best of times have been many, from early childhood, family life, and I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention all the trips. Trips to Italy, to France, to Greece, to Israel. And supposedly, at least he would tell his staff, he was going on retreat. Or it was an educational opportunity. But he never seemed to come back when retreats would end, you know how it is, or take an extra few days here or there. And of course, the staff would be praying like mad that somebody would give him a Valium on the plane, because he'd be coming back with all kinds of new ideas. So even though we'd be scurrying around and trying to get the office all cleaned up before he would arrive and make everything look just so, after weeks of exhaustion trying to maybe hold things together as best as we could, Walter would come home, and at a staff meeting there'd be a new idea, there'd be a new vision, and it was exciting, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. It was absolutely wonderful. The best of times, yes, would be your ordination and all of the years that you spent studying for your degree in sacred theology to receive your doctorate. Those were the best of times. But it was also the relationships that you forged during all of those years that were very, very rich. The best of times was certainly at Our Lady's. We used to call those years, these were the years of Camelot, because we knew if we had other assignments, wouldn't maybe be Camelot. There might be other words for it, I might not be able to say those words today, but anyway, we did have Camelot. Walter's charism for hospitality, for creating a community where all were welcome. And as Walter said so often, whether you're gay or straight, married, separated, divorced, whether you're hanging on by your thumbnails, everybody was welcome at Our Lady's. And when he said that at midnight mass one year, there was a groundswell of applause. People were on their feet. And they were on their feet clapping because they never heard that in a parish before. They never knew that they were welcome. They never knew that somebody cared about their names. They didn't know that. But we had that. And it was wonderful. And then there was that groundswell of people coming in through the doors. You couldn't keep them away. One time the diocese tried to shut down the church and the parish hall, and they didn't want all of the archdiocesan meetings to be held there. That was one of the controversial years. And the next Sunday, the place was packed. People were coming in the doors, through the windows, up the elevator, down the stairs. It was absolutely marvelous. So as we said after Mass that Sunday, bring it on. And we did. We did all of that. The best of times happened when Walter had a passion and a fire burning in his belly for equality, for human rights, for justice, for peace. And the human rights and justice issues were front and center when we learned that our gracious neighbors here at the Adams Street Synagogue had been violated by a vandal who drew swastikas and anti-Semitic graffiti on the walls of this beloved synagogue. Walter, as is his custom, took immediate action, and after Mass on a Sunday morning, the homily that Sunday was when we took our feet and marched up Adams Street to support our sisters and brothers whom we love so much. And we too felt their pain, and we too felt that sense of violation because they were violated. Now, marching up the street is one thing, but when you have your altar server carrying the cross and going up the street, it turned out to be, we got to move, we got to do it, and everybody's got to come. So the altar servers who were already all dressed up in their robes, they did what they always do. They grabbed the cross and out they go. But it was good, because again, it was a blending of two communities. That moment still is etched in my mind and heart, and I know for many of you here who marched with us, that was etched in your minds and hearts as well, and it's made all the difference because it was an experience of how we build community together. And it's in those simple moments of reaching out and saying, we care, we love you, we stand with you, we are in solidarity with you, and we will work for the same issues of peace and justice that you work for. One of the worst of times was that day for this synagogue. But as life would have it, blessings come out of the worst of times. And the example that Beryl mentioned earlier was one of those, when you and Fran got the kids from both communities together to share all of your richness in religious traditions so that children would grow up in a faith where everybody joined hands together and we all felt as one community because we were just that. We also had adult faith programs with some of the other temples in the area where we would go and we would sit down up at the temple, and Walter and one of the rabbis would break open the scripture that they had chosen, and at our round tables we would be sitting there and we all blended together so that we would be able to share the richness of our own thoughts about particular scriptures. And it was an amazing experience. And once again, it just brought together communities and built stronger faith traditions. Throughout the years at Our Lady's, Walter's preaching became more impassioned. Rare was the homily when he didn't mention the richness of the Judaic tradition as something that was foundational for us to understand our scriptures. Rare was the homily that didn't stress commitment to the poor, the disenfranchised, social justice, equality in the church, and the rights of women and children, and the need to foster interreligious dialogue. Walter not only preached it, he lived it. Walter would also make sure that in our liturgical celebrations, that the wording in the songs, in the texts, in the rituals, and in the prayers, that all of those would be crafted to honor the dignity of our Jewish brothers and sisters. Walter is not your average priest. He would show up at the State House, for example, to oppose the political strategies when there would be amendments depriving children and anybody at risk. When those amendments were on the table, Walter would be there. Speaking your truth in public can oftentimes be misinterpreted, and it was. And for Walter, it was dangerous. But he had the courage of his convictions to speak his truth and the truth of the church. Costly though his public statements were, he consistently preached the inclusivity of the gospel message, and he upheld the teachings of the church. Unfortunately, the Archdiocese of Boston did not see it that way. And then, in September of 2005, the worst of times were about to descend on Walter and on his staff and the entire parish community. And as we know, he was removed from his position as pastor of Our Lady's. As devastating as that was, Walter has never been known not to get back up on his feet. And he did. And what an assignment he got. Brandeis community, to be the chaplain, the chief chaplain of Brandeis. What could be better? And even though we know that you loved Our Lady so much, you took your heart and you brought it to Brandeis, where again you're making such a difference, where you are loved and respected for who you are and for what you bring to that community. Walter sometimes is heard to say, you know, if I wasn't Catholic, I think I'd like to be Jewish. You just never know where life's going to take you sometimes. So out of the worst of times come the best of times. Walter, the bonds of friendship that you have forged in the Newton community, they're many, because you gave yourself not only as pastor of Our Lady's, but you were the pastor of Newton. And I know Mayor Cohen would say that. I know Tom Concanon, who's here, would agree with that. You pastor and shepherd anyone who walks into your life. You show up for all of us, whether it's with a bouquet of flowers for a special birthday, whether someone's father has died. I'm thinking of Chris Schiavone. Walter knew that it would be hard for Chris to go to Italy alone to see his dad, and Walter jumped on the plane with Chris, and together they went to bring his dad's father back home. There are many stories here I think all of you could tell. There are lots of Walter stories when he has been there for you, and he's been there for Fran and for myself and for the Grey Nuns. Walter always shows up. So your gift for showing up is very special. You support us with your love, your friendship, your gentle care, your wisdom, and your mentoring. And so today, we're all very proud of you. As we honor you today, you have our love, our support, and our friendship, because these are the best of times.
Now I would like to introduce Dr. Andrew Flagel. Dr. Flagel is Senior Vice President for Students and Enrollment at Brandeis University and a Senior Lecturer in Theater Arts. In addition to his administrative responsibilities, he teaches a course called The Art of Oral Communication. So I'm sure that we are going to be very interested in his presentation.
I'm more nervous than I was for my bar mitzvah. So as I was coming today, and I want to start out by bringing greetings from our president, Fred Lawrence, who dearly loves Walter and is in Washington, D.C. today, couldn't join us, and asked if I could say a few words. And he asked me because as I was joining Brandeis and had a conversation with President Lawrence, he was talking about my responsibilities. And he said, oh yes, you have athletics and admissions and student life and housing, and the chaplains report to you. Wow. I get my own chaplain. I said, well, who's it's Brandeis University, famously founded by the Jewish community in the aftermath of World War II in response to the exclusionary practices of the elite institutions, perhaps the greatest gift of the Jewish people to the American public, this incredible pluralistic institution. Who is the head chaplain? Father Cuenin? Doesn't sound like a rabbi. And then I got to know Father. He was actually on the search committee, no less. So I got to read about Father before I got to meet him. And of course, as was mentioned, to read about Father, you learn an incredible amount on the internet about the things that he's done, about the people that he's moved. What you don't get in all the passion is the love. Because what really comes through so clearly in everything that Walter does is that incredible force, that powerful emotion, that incredible capacity that he has to spread love. And Brandeis is a place, it is a very, very special place. You have these students, we were talking a little bit downstairs about these incredible students who believe, if you ever doubt that the world can be better, come sit in one of our classes for a few minutes, because they believe it. They believe that they will do it. They believe, more than anything else, to those to whom much is given, much is expected, and they own that. They believe in Tikkun Olam. They believe that they can repair the world. And in this atmosphere, this institution founded with an ideal of social justice, comes Walter Cuenin. And a priest comes in to lead the chaplaincy of this Jewish institution with a message that everyone really is welcome, that everyone can make a difference, that healing the world isn't something that you just talk about, but something that you do in your practice each and every day. When I got to Brandeis University, I came first to the High Holy Day services and soon after to Mass with Father. And both were beautiful and meaningful. But I have to say, after a lifetime growing up in Shul, what I felt in that Mass was love. The community that comes to campus, and you have to be at Christmas services to really see it. Which, by the way, God willing, if the fire marshal's not in the room, you shouldn't come. Because they're in every corner and every nook. I don't know how you squeeze those folding chairs into those spaces and steps. And it's a family. Father welcomed my wife and I to this community, perhaps like no one else. And I think, as you heard just a moment ago from Sister, you hear that story over and over and over again, from Jewish students, from Catholic students, from Protestant and from Muslim. And since I was told today, I'm also hiring a Hindu chaplain from Hindu students as well. Because Father doesn't rest, because he has that capacity for goodness. Now, I'll say it's a little intimidating to know that he reports to me and hear him compared to Abraham and Moses and King Arthur. I think, though, Camelot is now getting to come to a place, and we have a castle.
That's true, we do.
Getting to come to Brandeis, these three beautiful chapels. You know, the three chapels famously designed so that the Protestant, the Jewish, and the Catholic chapel, none will ever cast a shadow on the other. We have that atmosphere. And to get to be part of this community, in Waltham, in Needham, in Newton, Father is one of those forces that brings us out of our castle, out of our ivory tower, and out into the world. And that is so vitally important for the students that want to make a difference. So I want to thank you all deeply. The continuing ties with this temple, with this community, with all of you, are so incredibly valuable to us. And to be here for an opportunity to hear you honor someone who we all love so much is very, very special. Mazel tov on your 100-year anniversary. Toda Rabbah. Thank you for all that you have done and for all that we will do together. And Father, l'chai. Congratulations. Thank you.
I'd like to invite David Olson, the City Clerk of the City of Newton.
It's my honor to be here on behalf of the City of Newton to present this commendation to Reverend Walter Cuenin. From 1993 to 2005, Father Cuenin served with honor and distinction at Our Lady Help of Christians Church in Newton, where he was a beloved and respected member of the community. Father Cuenin also served admirably as president of the Newton Clergy Association, in addition to many other roles where he donated his time and efforts to help others. The City of Newton is proud to join Father Cuenin's friends, family, and colleagues in thanking him for his many years of dedicated service to our community. This is proudly awarded the Certificate of Commendation to Reverend Walter H. Cuenin, June 3rd, 2012, and signed by Mayor Seti D. Warren.
You have been told that Walter is being awarded the Cornerstone Award for Community Building. What is the Cornerstone Award? What does it represent? And why is Father Cuenin the recipient of this award? We want to honor a man who is one of the most beloved and most honored members of the Newton community. How do we describe his contributions in the dozen years that he served Newton and our beloved community of the lake? A cornerstone is a stone on which the whole building rests. The placing of a cornerstone represents the intention of the builders of the community to create something concrete, substantial, and lasting. Our little synagogue, 100 years old this year, is not very imposing when compared to the size and grandeur of Our Lady's, but it represents the same pride, the same intentions of our immigrant community that Our Lady's represented to its builders 139 years ago. Father Cuenin represents in his life the intention of the builders of Our Lady's. He brought to life the intentions of its builders. He brought those ideals forward into the 21st century. He gave voice to that cornerstone. The cornerstone of community itself is to be found in dialogue and relationships. The cornerstone is aware of and respects other cornerstones in the community, the other buildings, the other people in the other buildings, the people down the street, the people across the street, the people next door. Father Walter Cuenin is being honored today for being the living embodiment of the intentions of the builders of our communities. Our synagogue and our community, your church and your community, and the community that we share in the lake have all been enriched and strengthened by his presence and his actions. Even if these actions happened in 1993 or 1997 or 2005, their impact still reverberates today. We all lean on Father Cuenin as the cornerstone of our shared community. We award him this simple plaque to honor his position and to remind ourselves that we should all strive to be cornerstones ourselves. It's a very plain plaque. It says, Congregation of Gudas Achim Anshe Spar, the Adam Street Synagogue, honors Father Walter Cuenin with the Cornerstone Award for Community Building.
I was saying to Andrew, who's our vice president at Brandeis, I feel like I'm at my canonization ceremony. And I haven't died yet, so. I know the rabbi was saying before about the red yarmulke would have been appropriate because maybe then I could be like a cardinal. And I said the white yarmulke is better because my religion, there's only one guy who wears the white hat. he's at the Vatican. In fact, my very first year when I was here in Newton, I spoke at Temple Emmanuel, which is not too far away, and they gave me a white yarmulke, and that's what I said. This is a great honor. Today's been wonderful. Thank you so much for this honor and all your words, and Marie and Andrew and Barry. I mean, everyone. It's been really great. I'm sure my priest buddies who live with me will, later on tonight, as we have a drink or something, they might say, get this out of your head. Have another scotch or something. You know, it's I love the picture that we used for the invitation, and I purposely had that done so it would be that the Star of David could be above my head in front of the shul. And I was thinking that it's interesting how in both Christianity and in Judaism, the star has special meaning. In Christianity, of course, the star in Bethlehem, part of the midrash of the story, the star shone, the star here, the Star of David, because we are guided, both of our communities, both Judaism and Christianity, by God's light. And that's what I really enjoyed in my life as a priest, to see how the relationship between Judaism and Christianity has so changed for the better. When you think of 2,000 years of so much persecution on the part of the Christian church to the Jews, to see it all changing. And that's been a great, great blessing. And the relationship that we built here with our children coming here to study. We also had youth groups going to Temple Shalom. And the text study we did with different temples. Very important. I remember one day, we were at Temple Emmanuel, I think. And for 3 years we just did Old Testament, quote, quote, Jewish texts, okay? Then the rabbi and I thought, well, I think it's time to do a New Testament text. See how it goes. So we picked something from Matthew's Gospel. We're sitting at a table, and this one Jewish person says to the group, wow, this sounds pretty Jewish. Where do you think it came from? But to see in my lifetime, I mean, I was ordained in 1970, so just about 5 years after the Second Vatican Council, when things were just beginning to change. And when you think of where we've come from to where we are today, there's still a long way to go, don't get me wrong. Anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is increasing in parts of Europe, and it just never seems to go away. So we have to keep working at it. But to see the connection between the two is so powerful. And that's what I think under the last Pope, John Paul II, while he wasn't a perfect Pope, in my opinion, there were some things that I didn't agree with. However, on the Catholic-Jewish issue, he was phenomenal. First Pope to pray in the synagogue, Pope to make the relationship between the Vatican and Israel, an official ties. And then he went to Israel toward the end of his life. And I don't know if you recall, but when he went to pray at the wall. And a lot of his advisors said to him, oh, Your Holiness, you shouldn't pray at the wall. You should just visit it, like a tourist. Because if you pray at the wall, it's like saying Judaism is okay. It has value. He prayed at the wall. And that prayer is actually kept, I think it's at Yad Vashem in the Holocaust Museum. They kept that little piece of paper. So I've been very lucky as a priest to have grown up in a time when we can have this kind of wonderful connection. And all my life as a priest, I've been very involved in interfaith and ecumenical work. Starting in North Andover, my first parish, to Lexington, where I got very involved with several of the temples. In fact, I think I cost a rabbi his job back over there. Sorry. We did this interfaith sharing back and forth. So 2 nights at the church, 2 nights at the temple, blah, blah, blah. So one night when the Jewish group came to the church, I was explaining about the cross and what it means and how the cross has been changed over the years, blah, blah, blah. So the rabbi is standing there holding the crucifix. And the local newspaper took a picture. So we're still friends to this day, but he often says, I think that cost me my job. But that's been my attitude all the way along. And what I found is that, you know, when you do this kind of outreach, you get enriched by it. It's a blessing. And then going to Brandeis has been really, as Marie said, I mean, it was hard to leave Our Ladies, but Brandeis has been the best thing that happened to me. As I tell people, the church got rid of me, but the Jews took me in. And when the kids sometimes refer to me as the chief rabbi, I think that's great. I'm very happy. But as Andrew mentioned, it's a great school. A lot of bright young kids interested in doing something in the world. And as I get older, it's my chance to give us a contribution to them, to be with them, to support them, and to challenge them, and to enjoy them. So it's a great, great blessing. So I want to end with, I want to read the prayer that Pope John Paul wrote and put into the wall in Jerusalem. I'm going to be in Israel this summer working with some former Brandeis students who are working over there, and looking forward to that. We were planning to go climb Mount Sinai, but the other day they captured 2 Americans and took them somewhere, so I think we're going to give that up for this year. Although I did climb Mount Sinai one time. It took me about 3 days to recover. Because I went up on a camel. They had these little Bedouin kids that guide you up to the top. But when I finally came down, you walked down like 1,000 steps that some crazy monk built in the 6th century. It took me a long time to recover, but it was a great experience. And I love going to Israel because it's part of my heritage as well. So this prayer I think is very beautiful. It's a little bit not gender inclusive as we would probably do it today, but it's a prayer from a pope who of course lived in Poland during the Nazi occupation. And one of his very best friend was a Jewish fellow. And so he knew the horrors of what happened. And he really worked hard at that, trying to reconcile the 2 communities. So I offer this prayer as a prayer for this wonderful temple, shul, synagogue, for all of our Jewish friends here today, and for all my other friends who are with us and those who couldn't be here today, and for the students at Brandeis too. God of our fathers, you chose Abraham and his descendants to bring your name to the nations. We are deeply saddened by the behavior of those who in the course of history have caused these children of yours to suffer. And asking your forgiveness, we wish to commit ourselves to genuine brotherhood with the people of the covenant. Jerusalem, March 26, 2000. Johannes Paulus II. Thank you so much.
That we'd like you to sign your name and email address, and then you're invited to come downstairs and have dessert with us.